You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a micro review of a recently released August 21st film called Hard Kill, which you would never have heard of but for the fact that it contains Bruce Willis and 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, and all the conversation has been about him taking paychecks to star in bad films, as though that has just started. I reviewed a film called The Prince. When that came out, I couldn't tell you, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and that I think also had 0 on Rotten Tomatoes as well. I think it had 50 Cent in it, and it had like Bruce Willis sort of walking past in the background. I think he didn't appear until like the last 10 minutes or something. And I think I might have given that film a 0. It was atrocious. It was a really hard film to stare at and watch without sort of going, am I watching a film? What was happening? I've got no idea, because you just couldn't focus on it. It was atrocious. But this one, Matt Eskandari. Now, has he done anything? This is a micro view. It's not going to take very long. Iranian-American film director. His films include The Gauntlet, 12 Feet Deep. Don't know. He was a contestant on Fox News, Fox Studios and Steven Spielberg filmmaker competition. I don't know how well he did in that. This is I am a baseline for trash films with guns in. I gave a good review-ish to The Tax Collector. I thought Rogue, I don't know what that's getting on Rotten Tomatoes, but I thought that was actually pretty decent. I gave it a 4 out of 10 because the line effect made it too hard to not laugh at, but it was still an enjoyable film. This is another level to The Tax Collector and Rogue. This is a level of filmmaking that isn't to a standard that should be released. It's one of those things where you've got mercenaries, some object that the military-industrial complex are making or want, and there's Bruce Willis as one of the things that really grated with me, as soon as Bruce Willis appears in one of like 2 locations that are in the whole film, he mentions like he used to be in the army and where he used to serve. He served in both Mogadishu and Somalia, and that really, really wound me up. If you're that lazy not to know that Mogadishu is the capital of Somalia and list them as 2 separate places. But it got much worse from there. So basically, Bruce Willis has manufactured some world-killing weapon. One group of mercenaries is trying to get it. Another group of mercenaries is trying to get it. And they're baddies, and the other side are goodies. It's not. I would watch the lowest rent film with guns in. I would, but this isn't to a watchable standard. It's more like they've gone. It's more like filming a paintball session. It seems to be that virtually 95% of the film takes place in the same warehouse, with both sides sort of moving around and pointing their weaponry. It is virtually impossible to focus on. I fast forwarded a fair bit of this film, as in maybe about 50% of it, because you can't focus on anything. None of the acting is remotely close to being an acceptable standard. It would be in the realms of so bad it's worth watching for how awful the acting is, but it's the criminal thing you can do if you're making a so bad it's good film is be very boring. Excuse me. This is so boring it's impossible to focus on. So that is a micro review. There's no one in it that's remotely famous. Jesse Metcalf, do you know who that is? Apparently he was in a TV show, but if he's as close as they come to a professional actor. The other people, you or I could do better. I know that's, people say, yeah, but you could actually act better than they do in this film. Nothing means anything. The violence and the action are so boring and bland. Like I said, paintball level. They just walk around doing this a bit and occasionally like firing guns. But that's about it. It shouldn't have been released. The only reason it was released is that Bruce Willis was in it. Why he was in it? Have they kidnapped his children? They do kidnap his child in the film, so maybe that was like an in-joke because they had kidnapped his kids. I'm going to have to give it 0 out of 10 like I gave We Summon the Darkness. But We Summon the Darkness was a professionally made film. It looked like a proper movie. that worked for it 0 out of 10. So I almost don't want to score this at all, because it doesn't. It's not a film made to a standard that should be released. There's nothing about it that is cinematic quality release. So I'm going to give it a maybe 0 out of 10, because it doesn't even really qualify for that. So don't bother at all with Hard Kill, not even once. It's not worth your time. Angel Olsen. Now, she's one of my favourite.